Hey everybody, Jumpgate here, joined with Kyle and Mitch here.
Hey everybody.
Faceless
How are
Mitch
y'all
today,
doing
unfortunately. My camera's broken, I apologize.
I'm gonna let a couple more people get into the chat here. Kyle, how have you been today?
It's fantastic. Feeling the blonde here now,
Yeah, absolutely, looking slick.
I think I put like over 500 Dusk into Rusty Rigs by Jack today. Still nothing. Still mad about that.
Mitch is having a little bit of technical difficulties on his webcam, but don't worry, he's here. He can talk, he hears you, he sees us.
Yep.
Everything's looking really good. So, I think we're going to start off by just jumping into some questions right off the bat, and we will get into our giveaway for those who have filled out our form and submitted a question. Anybody that's already submitted the form is in on the giveaway. Anybody that submits now, unfortunately, that has already been snapshot for the day, but we can get to your questions. So please feel free to ask any questions here in the chat or on the forum. I will try to get to them if possible, but we did have quite a few people get into the questions here. So to start out, Mitch, what do you see Million on Mars looking like in 2 years? Just kind of a rough picture. Where's your goal?
Oh my gosh, that is just a rough picture of 2 years in the future from now. No big deal on an opener like that, eh?
I take them as they come, Mitch.
Where to begin? I will keep it light. I think it's going to be really hard to really predict where things are going to be, 6 months from now, let alone 2 years from now. I expect that we're going to continue to see transformative experiences that extend into multiple games, multiple platforms and chains on multiple devices. To me, I see more than anything the games and the teams that survive the current sort of bear cycle in the market, that emerge from the sort of downturn in the economic cycle, will be really resilient and strong and capable of innovating in a space where everyone else is just trying to get their feet wet and just get established. And I think that's the really interesting thing about what will happen in the coming months and years, is that we'll get past this sort of what's called skeuomorphic phase, in which we're just trying to rebuild and recreate a lot of the same things we're already used to, just in the sort of new form of things, the Web3ification of everything we already know. Once we get past that, innovation will really start to flourish. So hopefully we'll be in that phase in 2 years, and we will start to see things that are hard to even think about or predict from where we are today. It's like, imagine trying to predict social networks or social media when you couldn't even spend money on the internet. It's really hard to imagine where the internet goes at its inception. The same thing as where we are now in terms of innovating.
Yeah, I absolutely think that's the perfect take on it. I mean, especially in the space that we're in the Web3. I mean, 2 years ago, it was a completely different world, So 2 years from now, that equally could be said. Who knows what the future brings, but we're here to push towards it. I think that's really great. So let's follow up with another question for Mitch. I think people are really interested in what the cooking profession is going to hold for them and their martizens, because they are really just tearing up this question list. It's all about cooking.
Well, I don't want to totally give away everything about cooking, because I want to actually put in time to plan. Well, one, it hasn't been fully fleshed out. It hasn't had all the, we have a lot of big, broad ideas. We have a means of thinking through sort of how we want to tie this into all the existing systems and aspects of the game. But at a high level, I'll kind of outline what some of the things that I have in mind, but take this with a grain of salt in terms of this is kind of creative design exploration kind of outlining. It's not this is what you should expect kind of thing. So At its basic level, the existing items of food and water are going to go through a transitionary phase. Players eventually will stop eating the generic sort of food item, and that existing food item and food supply will have multiple ways in which it can sort of transition and move into the new sort of economic supply chains that we stand up for cooking. But the intent and what we're going to move towards is that when you actually grow crops, you actually get the items that you're growing. So when you grow soy, you get soy. When you grow sweet potatoes, you get sweet potatoes, things like that, so that those base ingredients can then actually be leveraged and utilized in the actual cooking system. We're missing a bunch of buildings that are going to be needed for this system to really thrive, and I would say that that's the most exciting part for me, is getting to like plan out a bunch of new buildings and supply chains that are going to be all tied together. At its the current thinking, like I imagine we'll need some type of a commissary kitchen type building, something that you need to like prepare food, something that would like hold or have some type of a storage facility built into it, and a way in which you can it's really just for like the basics of cooking. And then beyond that, I think we would need well, I've already thought about something like a composter, which would be an advanced means of producing soil and would allow us to have a way to sort of get rid of excess food that is either harvested or the older food item that can be used in the sort of composting system. I think composting is an essential part of gardening and agriculture and life science, you know, in the way I have it thought through, especially and it'll run very parallel to the cooking system if you already do life science. So you know, we're thinking ahead past just basic farming of crops and seeds into eventually we'll have aeroponics as a means of doing farming. So that means that's a soilless method in which you're using lots of water and nutrient filled water that you're having to change on an ongoing basis. And the extension of doing that kind of like aeroponics or hydroponics based approach is that you can then build what's called aquaponics, in which you then are fertilizing your water through nutrients produced by a tank of fish or tilapia type thing. So I think that's a pretty obvious introduction into an actual protein food source that'll find its way into the cooking system. So probably a good chance there'll be a lot of fish dishes and things that are tied in from fish into the cooking system in the near future. But as mentioned previously in the leaks, there's plans for more sources of protein beyond that. So I imagine soy will play a big, heavy component because it's used in all types of cooking applications as a protein source, as it's used in a lot of different ways. I have to imagine there'll be a lot more than that. I don't want to spoil everything, but that hopefully will give a nice look into what to expect for cooking.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You've got my wheels turning, especially with that aquaponics there. You know, balancing all that out would be a feat for any Martian.
Absolutely, yeah. That's why it's meant for those upper profession tiers, right? It's for the more experienced and established players. It's not going to be if you don't have a high level, then it won't be available to you most likely.
Yeah, so I think that actually kind of segues into my next question here regarding the higher tiers of professions. Firstly, players are asking, Mitch, where are the journeyman tasks? Where are my artisan tasks? Are they coming? Or are we just building out the apprentice tier until it can't fit any more tasks?
Oh yeah, there is a lot of organizational efforts being done, a lot of new recipes being added. The big thing announced this week was the adjustments of the fabrication and machining and mining systems. So mainly making it so that fabrication is the primary profession used for making structural buildings, making shards for pretty much all buildings, and other additive manufacturing crafting chains. So basically things that you would make with a 3D printer at the engineering bay largely will fall under fabrication type things. And then in addition to that, you can do the most novice and apprentice levels of tool making, but once you're beyond that, your tools aren't just something that you're kind of like handcrafting. They're actually like machines basically that are doing the kind of work. And so we wanted that to fit more in the narrative, vein of machining. Machining was also just dramatically lacking in a lot of recipes and areas that are things to do across the profession. So it becomes the mainstay for tools, but it also gains the ability to create certain aspects of the of building construction supply chains where applicable. So for me, I was looking at what are the big machine-based buildings or blueprints that actually seem like they're giant machines that you have to manufacture. Those are the things that I felt made more sense to be in the machining chain than in the fabrication chain. So your coffee, your grind and brew, your water filter, your CAD, your SAB, and mining rig and robotics, not robotics, sorry, the Rover works. So just things like that, just trying to add a stronger distribution to everything. When you added all of the tiers, all the new craftable packs, mintable items, the number of recipes for fabrication and machining are roughly the same. So across all the tiers, there's over 100 recipes now. So the goal there really is to flesh out all of the level ranges and all of the profession tiers so that there is something for people to be doing at each of those ranges. And we're going to be carrying that forward through all of the professions. We have the update I shared earlier this week kind of teases out a lot of those things. So it talks about some of the higher level aspects of life science. It teases a little bit about mining, things like thorium mining and asteroid mining, which I definitely won't talk a lot about because it's just really early and there's too much interesting things about that I want to save for later. But yeah, that's we're definitely thinking about this as like at each of the profession tiers, what is the compelling and interesting thing that you are focused on in that profession? What is the unique thing that stands out about that profession? So, for things like machining, it's, you start with basic machining efforts, then doing sheeting and plating, then heat treating, hot forming, molding, and then you make advanced machines and tools and expert machines and tools. Like there's a clear, progression of things that you are able to do. And this is the case for basically all the professions. That is our plan, is to have these things very well mapped out so that, and to also communicate this stuff and put out the plan for what we're doing here a little bit far ahead, so that everyone can understand, even if the content isn't fully released, they can get a sense of like what are the things that you're going to be able to do in that profession.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that gives a really good insight into how that's all looking. So basically the TLDR there is that if you pick a profession and you're at any particular tier, don't worry, the tasks are coming.
Just I see a couple little things related to my responses in the chat. I'm going to just quickly
please do
respond to them just for people to
while we're on the topic.
So yeah, since they know. Yeah. So let's see. There was one. Oh, how is a 3D printer not a machine? If you look at the building name, it's a 3D print shop. It's not just the actual printer. So the shop itself is like a big structure, and yes, there would be like 3D printers and other machines inside of it. But there are certain cases in which especially when we have this sort of weird chicken and egg thing where one building can make another building that can make itself. So like the machine shop and the 3D print shop can make each other's respective buildings in a way, and it's so like there's some of these things make more sense from a design perspective, just to sort of streamline it out. Other things make more sense from a sort of a realism perspective. And yes, mining XP is hard. That will change very, very soon. All the smelting tasks are going to become mining tasks instead. So you'll get mining XP when you smelt instead of machining. Once all the new machining recipes are in place, I'll do the switch over there. So you'll have some choices. Yeah, I think that's all related here. There's, of course, other questions I will save for later to respond to. Like we'll talk about the fees. We'll talk about other things like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm sure players are definitely interested to hear your opinions on those things. So, another thing I hear is that you've obviously teased the spaceports. You gave a little bit about asteroid mining. I think that was all covered here. So, maybe we can skip that from now when those get a little bit closer to being an actual reality here. So, I do have a question. What are we doing to kind of shore up the experience for new players? We have players come in, and there's a lot to do at the end game here. But what do you see their path being right now?
New players, I think, could not have a better time to start playing the game than ever. I think, with how much we've released in the last almost year now since launch, new players coming into the game have a very easy opportunity to, hit the ground running with scavenging, to find and join a settlement. Very soon, when we launch our new tutorial and first-time user experience, they'll have a much more guided experience for the first few days of play, in which they're given sort of onboarding missions and tasks that teach them how to do the basics, in sort of a more hands-off approach that's meant to really guide them through understanding the fundamentals of the game. When those are combined with the updated professions sort of streamlining efforts, my hope is that new players will have their biggest challenge and problem will be picking professions they want to specialize in, because there's so many interesting choices. Like, that's my real goal, is like to have a hard time picking out which profession you actually want to like do, because they all sound fun and interesting. And so there's definitely will be a lot more content that's front loaded for new players coming in that sort of help get them into all the various crafting chains. But we certainly still won't be forgetting experienced and elder players along the way as well. So it's, we have efforts that are moving in multiple parallel directions, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ari in the chat says I have to ask Kyle something now. So Kyle, you've got a question on deck. You've been here since the very beginning. You're Eric's son, and you had a good hand in the Steam game that was created, our 3D version of our parallel world here. So do you, kind of a question for Mitch and Kyle here, but what are the plans to kind of get this game into a 3D space? Do we have any 3D space plans? What do you know?
I'll go first because I don't know too much about what's going on. And if I'm talking about more like just a fantasy type, what would be cool if I could want anything would be, I think the cool thing about the Steam game, I don't know if anyone here has played it or not, but like the ability to walk around your little like city or your little zone and like see if the buildings up close and everything like that. That's what was killer for me. And I think that's the one thing that I do miss being in this like Web3, 2D space, is like actually like going into the buildings, seeing them all out, like walking around. That's how I want to feel, because I imagine myself as kind of like the boss of my my settlement, my land, and I'm like doing stuff in there. So it'd be really cool if we could somehow combine the two, later on in the future, where we can like see our buildings, walk around, do that kind of stuff. That would be the big thing for me. I would love something like that.
Yeah, I agree. I would love to walk around and just check out my greenhouse in big glory, maybe in some VR there.
Exactly.
What about you, Mitch? Do you want to see the game in 3D? Do you want to take a settlement view perspective?
I want
inspect all the buildings.
So to me, I mean, I got the start of my career many years ago, when like Facebook games were first taking off, and then shortly thereafter, mobile games became massive as well. And like that was over a decade ago, in which I was like a strong proponent of a cross-platform experience that could be experiential and different on both of those platforms. And still, like 15 years later, like I sound like an old man griping about these things, like shaking at the clouds or whatever. But it's true. Like, not a lot of games are really offering cool experiences that fit the platform and making things that feel great for different platforms. It's everything just feels very like locked and isolated. Like you just feel like a mobile game, or you just feel like a desktop game or a console game. And I think that having Web3, having access to assets or outside of your game, and being able to create a different experience allows such a different and more unique opportunity to create something that feels different, or to just create a completely different presentation layer that changes how immersive something is for people without like totally destroying it for everyone else who's used to it, on as what they've already had. So like I would imagine being able to like, yes, have that cool 3D experience, maybe being able to like socialize at the gallery with other people, being able to go down to the cantina and actually like hang out with other people, like that shit is super cool to me. But at the same time, I love the accessibility of being able to play from my phone, being able to like play in short sessions. So I want my cake and being able to eat it too. I want to be able to do both basically. And that's like where I dream about, is like being able to extend the experiences in different ways that are compelling for the people that want it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that gives us a lot of flexibility too, that it doesn't necessarily need to support the blockchain in a 3D game if it's linking to the same similar world that exists and exists in that 2D space, that you can just activate on your phone whenever you're playing, pull out your phone and have a 3D client going at the same time on your computer. Who knows? It could be really interesting to see how we take this in the future. I'm excited, that's for sure. Kyle, I've got another one for you. This is pretty much in your wheelhouse. What's going on with the depositing wax in game there? Do we have any plans to get a whole store wrapped up?
Yeah, I think I can say this now. So the whole goal is the ability. So we have NFT blocks and we can set up drops in there. And for internal reasons, it's kind of hard for us to set up NFT blocks. I can go on and on about that. What would be really cool is if that was just inside the game. So the goal is, for those Thursday, weekly drops, to actually be able to buy those in game. So you don't have to go to NFT blocks. You don't have to do anything. You just go to the game. And the whole point, is just to streamline this and just so you don't only have to hang out in one place. Obviously our game, that's where we want you guys. We love you guys. We want you guys here. So I would expect that next week that should be all up. That'll be my little hint for that. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wax as well too. That's just one thing that we have going on. Our main thing.
Let's go ahead, and we've been on the air for about 20 minutes here, so I think this is a good time to pause and give away our first Martisan. This first Martisan is going to be the one for players that submitted a form entry and asked us some of these great questions. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the wheel here, and here we go.
Now, roll sounds we can do.
Oh, we'll see. I have no idea if the sound is going to carry over. I honestly did not check that out, so the chat will have to let us know if this is way too loud. And honestly, I don't think it's going to play, but we'll find out. Some of you players dropped your wax address here, so because we're only giving one away, I'll do my due diligence and try and track down if you have an attached Phantom address in game. If you don't, unfortunately, I'll be re-rolling, but I'll announce the final winner. If we get a sole address off the bat, we don't have to deal. There we go. So if that's you, congratulations.
You can search them and figure out who they are real quick so we can say something.
That's a fair.
If you submitted a question, you are already in the giveaway. That
is how that works. If you submitted a question through the AMA forum, we've posted a couple links across Discord and Twitter over the last couple of days. So that was the way to hop on that train. We'll be doing these AMAs from time to time, and we generally do giveaways as kind of a reward for players that want to reach out and ask us these questions. So, next time, if you look out for it, that's the opportunity there. Pop that off the stream as we go search them up. And while I do that, Mitch, I do have another question that you might want to answer here, because this might take a little bit of your time here.
Oh,
so players are a little bit, this player might be a little bit frustrated about the ever-changing balance that take place. While they do believe that this is necessary, they do think that players with limited resources might not have the confidence to produce a progression plan and see that to fruition without something changing in either their favor or against it. So is there any thought in your mind about maybe like a season? Like a season of the Martisan, like other games have done, to kind of wrap up major game design changes in a time frame?
I yes and no, I would say. So I do love the idea of having seasonal themes and content and things that sort of maybe change the rules up a little bit or that feel different for a period of time. Especially in live service-based games, this is really common. That are these kind of things are tied together with a battle pass often, right? You'll see that in every free-to-play game. I think those kind of things make sense once we have once the waters are calm and the balance and the amount of content we have feels much more stable and predictable. There's just a lot more things that need to be fleshed out, and at the pace and the speed at which we're trying to get things established and we're trying to fill in the gaps, it can feel overwhelming and it can feel challenging when things are changing at a frequent pace. My constant recommendation is to not try to not be focused on the short term. It'd be much more like mindful of your more longer term aspirational sort of goals and what you're working towards. Like if you should have an understanding of like what the theme of a profession is, or for what what parts of the game you actually find to be enjoyable and worthwhile to actually do. And if that experience has not changed for you significantly, then you should try to not worry as much about like what's going to happen in the near term. Basically, everything that we're doing is with intent and with a purpose. We're not intentionally trying to hurt players' experiences. We're not trying to make things. It's for everything is with the intent of bettering the experience for everybody. So even in the most recent examples of withdrawal fees that have adjusted, like that is not to, like we're not trying to piss everybody off. We don't want everybody angry at us. We're trying to legitimately put in strong corrective actions to course correct and solve issues that are impacting everybody. And everyone has different thoughts and takes on like the best way to do things, especially when it comes to how frequently you should release things or update things, how well you should communicate about things. And there are costs associated with all of those kind of things and trade-offs that come with it. For example, just the time it takes to write patch notes and to update things for very trivial changes could be spent making better balance and experiences for other aspects of the game. Like everything is a trade-off, and with a small team like ours, there are those considerations that we are making. And I don't, that's not to say that we can't be doing better efforts to communicate and update and continue to keep everyone current on what things are, but it's to sort of set an understanding, to help give everyone some context and understanding as to why some things are the way they are. So yeah, I don't know, maybe that helps answer things. If I didn't quite address it at any specific thing, please let me know. I'm happy to continue elaborating.
Oh, I think that was plenty of information for the players to take in and digest for a little bit. They might have to repeat that a couple times in the review here. So
sure.
Real quick one related to cooking, but pizza on Mars? What do you think? Yes, no, nothing specific.
When supply chains and ingredients make sense, most things are not a difficult stretch to implement.
So you're saying players should start requesting their favorite dishes now?
I mean, if you make the case for a recipe to be made, and that's not just with cooking, that's with like anything. Like if you're like, and you make especially if you back up with like reasoning or a link to some evidence that shows why something should be there, like 100%. Like literally, the coffee chain came from like Nay the Horse suggesting it like a year ago. Like he was pushing on it, and I like spent a little bit of time thinking like maybe we could do coffee, and like I thought about it, and we were able to build it in like a week. So like those things are definitely possible, and we welcome and encourage player feedback and suggestions for more recipes, more content. We definitely want to we want to build alongside our community.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are really great intakes on how to manage all that. So what do you see happening to the Rovers in the short term? are there going to be special rovers coming out? Are we going to get mini rovers? Are we expanding the? I would say what they're asking here is, are there going to be a menu increase here or are we just going to get new missions?
Probably both. I don't want to speak too much on behalf of Eric and Max, who've been doing a ton of heavy lifting on Rover content the last couple of weeks, but I would say we have much more ambitious ideas and plans in mind for what we want to do with rovers. We think they take a lot of effort and time, and they to construct, and they have a significant Dusk value behind them. For us, we want players to be able to invest more in their rovers. We think they should be NFTs. They should be more customizable. I think there's just a bunch of different things. Yeah, Max is baboosh. Sorry. And I just think there's a whole bunch of things that we can take the direction of rovers, and I can't wait to see what we're able to accomplish with that. Things like racing rovers, when you can actually have a lot more customizations and choices, becomes a hell of a lot more interesting and fun. Same thing if you're able to compete or battle against other rovers or other players. I think there's going to be some really interesting and exciting things that we're able to accomplish as we continue to expand on our features and what we're doing within the game.
Yeah, maybe even breaking them out of the fungibility here and turning them non-fungible.
Oh, I think that's very certainable. I think that's very certain. I think you should expect we will. And I'm always saying this because I've said it, many times over the last year, is that we want your rovers to be NFTs. I would say that may not be exploring and transportation rovers. It might be a different one. It might be, a higher class of rovers or something to that effect. But we certainly have visions of, or aspirational goals of allowing players to have managed NFT based assets for the specific professions they specialize in. So that you can take further and think about that in the context of other professions, and things get really interesting.
Sure. I think that also segues into this little profession question here, which deals with more of the specialization. What happens after 100, Mitch? You're limiting players down to 2 professions that they get to choose. How deep are these crafting chains going to go? Are you going to be able to pick 2 and interact in these chains pretty well, or are we really forcing the specialization hand on some of these massive, future things that we're planning on? And are we going to need an artisan, chemist, life scientist, robotics? All of the professions come together to have to create something that nobody can do themselves.
I think time will only tell how far down we sort of push these things, but I can say that, like I said earlier, where we want every tier of a profession to have a compelling and unique sort of thing to do or loop to participate in, or supply chain that you can be a part of. I think the same thing extends into the 2 tiers of specialization. So when you're sort of the master specialist of something, you gain the ability to start collecting signets. Those are going to be a material or a component that's required in crafting packs and minting specific NFTs, and will also be used for more advanced content and crafting that we do inside of the game. So we want to allow those signets to have a strong purpose, but they're also, if you specialize in that, you can also sell your signets if other players need them for the things that they're trying to get made as well. So just they're sort of like your union chip in a way. You're in this club of all the specialists basically. The same goes for the artisan tier. It will be even higher, in which you're able to create larger, more specialized packs. So the obsidian packs that I've been setting up inside of the game that you might have seen the templates for, if you look at the NFT data, the lowest rarity that they have is rare, and they come with 3 cards that are between rare and artisan for a given building or tool or something like that. And I think that moving the bands of rarity a little bit closer together for the most specialized players will allow them to really feel like they have something unique to offer that we're not selling these to players. They're designed to be made by players.
I think that makes sense because artisan crafters don't make common goods anymore, do they? They kind of get ahead of that.
Right, exactly. It's and we want the players at the higher ends of specialization to be we want them to care about the things they're making at their tier and to have less of a need or a reliance on the low end things. And in an ideal world, players that are just coming up in the game, that are just developing their or specializations of their professions, should be the ones that are able to pick up those lower tier, lower task, or lower skill jobs and stuff like that.
Absolutely. So a few of these questions regard any plans on a mobile app. I know we've spoke to this before. The ecosystems across Google Play and iOS Store aren't exactly too friendly with how the blockchain presents itself. But what are your thoughts, Mitch? Would you want to do this if everything lined up, regulatory in the green, or is this just something that we can do from a web app if we optimize it, we make it good?
Yeah. So there's certainly platform challenges that exist, and those are largely dependent on how close you fly to the sun, or basically how big you are and how much money you make Apple or Google. And in reality, like if they're making millions of dollars from your app, they're going to care a lot less if you have a very basic like crypto component. If you are not making them any money and you are very much like all crypto enabled or NFT enabled and you're doling out tokens, you're at a very high likelihood to just get smacked down and banned from the app stores. And that's certainly the feeling that I have about where things are right now. I just recently heard that Axie got approved on Google Play officially for their origin. And I bring this up because in getting approval, they were allowed wallet connection, NFT verification, but no earning whatsoever. Meaning that like you cannot earn SLP in their game. I would imagine they might be allowed to spend it, but realistically, like that would be akin to our app only allowing you to use the marketplace and only being able to, like, you wouldn't be able to do jobs, you wouldn't be able to do anything that generates Dusk, basically. And it could severely, if we had to follow the exact same kind of rules, it would just severely hamstring a lot of the different aspects of the game and make it pretty difficult. It's just a very open, and we're just not there yet. Yeah, it would be pretty handicapped. Exactly, it would be very limiting. And so right now I think it's more important and more worthwhile for us to just continue focusing on making the web-based browser experience as best as we can. We certainly acknowledge there are still remaining performance issues that are impacting players, especially on mobile. Those are not being ignored. We are trying to solve these things one by one as they are occurring. They are different issues that impact. They're all lag performance related things, but they impact players differently depending on their circumstances. So some of these things are impacting players with low end devices. Other ones are impacting players that have a massive DTM. Other ones are impacting players that own a settlement that have a lot of renting and a lot of other things going on. So we're looking for identifying where these bottlenecks are occurring and then working very specifically on addressing those with necessary solutions that that solve things. And yeah, to those like mentioning mobile again in the chat, yeah, like that's exactly what I'm saying, is that we are not ignoring it. We are focused on addressing things where we can. Some of these things just take time. They're not trivial things to identify or to even put in the best solution. So we are working on it. Will there be mini games? I would say it's possible in the future. I've actually thought about some things like this pretty recently in ways in which it might be pretty fun if specific tasks or things that you're doing are not just pushing a button, but you're actually having to like play a mini game to impact how successful your actions are or how good your yield is or things like that. I think that could provide very interesting things to the game. They just have to be designed right. They have to work on whatever the devices are. They can't just be only on the desktop. So we have to think through those solutions. But that's the novel thing about building something in the browser is that we can do so many unique things that are kind of cool.
Yeah, I agree. I've been playing games in the browser for as long as I can remember, so I do enjoy. Let's see here. To get into another question before we draw these celebrity martizens, I know there are a couple people in the chat that are very interested in getting out here. Mitch, what do you think about the new tournament leaderboards that we have? We started it off with this Love Cebu event that we're wrapping up with this, wonderful celebrity giveaway here. But what would you like to see scaled out? Low end tier tournaments, high end tier tournaments, everything in between.
I've got a bunch of ideas that I can't wait to kind of explore and sort of pick from and experiment and test with. I don't have anything super specific, but I would say that like I very much want to push forward tournament and competitive based things that players feel like they're on a relatively equal competitive footing on. I'm a big fan of segmenting things and grouping things in ways in which players feel like they get a pretty equal shot at things, because so much of what ends up happening when we do certain types of competitive things is that the players that just have the most are the ones that get the most chances at winning. And you will likely see content coming from me that pushes more for more equitable distribution opportunities. I mean, we certainly have that now with the new raffle style leaderboards that we're just rolling out. So that's a big intent behind that, and I think that everyone will find those to be pretty enjoyable. And overall, that's the case for a lot of things. It's sort of a philosophical viewpoint I have for a lot of things, which is that I want to encourage everyone to be using everything, basically. Like you should have a specialization, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be having things to do inside of all the special buildings. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have like goals and missions and quests to do or tasks to do every day. Like we want there to be a robust experience that is engaging and deep and rich for every player beyond just their specializations. Yeah,
absolutely. I see Near the Horse in chat there. In-game poker, make it happen.
Poker is one of those things that attracts the eye of Sauron. It's like you can't even. We let players do a poker night one time in the game, and then I read about 3 different Discord servers that got nuked because they were giving away, NFTs or whatever. They did like a there were sort of some prizes associated with it, and literally like Discord servers are getting nuked because they're being accused of facilitating gambling and things like that for just sort of friendly poker or even low stakes poker. So if we hosted that in the game, it would be not great, probably. But there are more interesting games of skill and luck, I would say, to come to the game. If you think about stuff like glyphs and vibes, I have a lot of other things in mind that I want to build that are a little bit deeper and richer and more interesting than that people will be able to play and have some entertainment value from.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I've got a couple more questions here that we can wrap up. We'll see if we get any more questions from the chat here. Feel free to ask anybody. Anything new coming up from the gallery, I see?
Yep. The gallery is certainly going to be getting a revisit very, very shortly in terms of adjusting some of the rewards once we've kind of got Dusk things in alignment. I would say we're also it's also going to become a building that has other utility functions in it that I don't want to totally give away yet, but Um, I think my intent is to make the gallery certainly have a very unique and compelling set of loops that can be done. Right now, I think it's pretty neat being able to sort of find and repair art. I'd say probably the effort and some of the things that are there need more adjustments, but the core idea I think is still pretty compelling.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, it looks like Kyle's having some technical difficulties there. He is no longer with us. Oh, let's see if we can get him back. Kyle, are you with us?
Yep, my Wi-Fi just pooped. I'm sorry about that.
On KyleBot. Oh no. So let's see here.
Let's see.
Take some more. Other way to gather gallery shards. Another gallery question there. Or plans for the shelter. All building questions for you, Mitch. Everybody's got their favorite.
Yeah, nothing immediate on shelters, I would have to say. Other ways to gather gallery shards. Yeah, the gallery will be purchasable for Dusk shortly, probably today. So that will become a means to get shards.
Somebody asks, new to this space, is there any benefit to the founder's token if we purchased one now? Well, yeah, there's plenty of benefit. There's some baked in glitter that's going to come out when that releases. You get a few of those weekly packs that's coming up till the end of November there, and you get access to founders chat, which is pretty entertaining sometimes. I think there's a host of value there, and if you ask people in the chat and Discord, I'm sure they're willing to tell you their opinion, for sure.
Absolutely.
Somebody asks, let's see here, Win Moon. So did you want to take the reins on how you feel about Dusk right now, where you want it, what it should be doing, how you feel about the taxes, Mitch? I know you spoke a little bit about it. Did you want to dig into that any deeper?
I think there's still more to go. We want to see a healthy distribution of Dusk sources across all aspects and areas of the game, not just in a very, very finite number. We want players that specialize to have opportunities to earn Dusk, when they're for their specialized efforts, not just for a limited select, set of players or a set of buildings. We will. The biggest thing I want to continue to echo is that nothing is permanent. Like nothing is like locked in stone forever. And in reality, like we need, sometimes we will do strong corrective course actions when necessary to get the boat back on track, because waiting and just watching and doing nothing doesn't actually solve anything, and taking action more swiftly and decisively is almost always the best approach, regardless of how painful it might be in the short term. It's sort of one of those necessary things, and this is where I will continue to repeat my prior statements, which is to just be patient and understand that, like, we have intent, we have reasoning behind what we're doing. We're trying to actually address and solve things, regardless if you think it's the best solution or not. But we're also still listening. We're also still doing everything we can to make sure that players are heard. And again, it's with the intent of making things better for everybody, not just for the few.
I see a comment in the chat here: space piracy. Want a pirate spaceship? Any plans for additional piracy or thievery on Mars besides airwaves, Mitch?
I like the idea of, a pirate themed spaceship I think is cool. I think customization for your buildings to have them look differently, I think, is certainly something we would love to be able to offer. But we need a better way of surfacing that to everyone else, because I think I don't know if it's just enough for where we are or where it is currently, basically. Like, I think we need a little bit yeah, we have a little bit further to go there on expression before we can really dive into that layer of customization in a way that'll be effective.
Yeah, absolutely. To another question here. I think this one relates to, we've talked about asteroid mining and interacting with the asteroids and pulling resources from them, but what about like additional colonization efforts? Are the Martians going to go to Phobos, Deimos? Are they going to go to different parts of the, I know we spoke about this a few different times. Has anything changed, Mitch?
I mean, those are long-term horizon things. You certainly need a way to get off of Mars before you can visit other places. So, being able to, the final profession that we haven't released will be aerospace, or at least the last one not mentioned is aerospace, and that is designed more specifically for players and for martisans to be able to command and pilot ships and shuttles, to be able to manage whatever you maybe build and set up in space. I think there's a bunch of different interesting things that we're going to build out there, and you're going to still need experts in all aspects of other professions to be part of your away team, to be part of your crew when you actually go on those missions, when you actually go do things. Like, if you've watched any type of science fiction, it's not just a bunch of pilots or basic like astronauts or generalists rather that are on the crew. Everyone has a specialization. There's a doctor, there's a scientist, there is the captain, but everyone has a different layer of specialization. And I think that those same kind of things will play into the way that we do missions, the way that we do those kind of things. And I think, like, if you're gonna, in the same way, like if you're gonna go mine an asteroid, like you need a pilot, you need miners, you need all types of people that are going to be able to help facilitate specific roles and things that are needed on those kinds of like missions and those kind of things that you do. So I think that it'll become pretty interesting, and it's going to become. I can't wait once we start to build out those components.
Yeah, I see it almost as like forming a party and tackling a dungeon in your favorite RPG. You got to have everybody with the right specialization and resources to get you through it, and unexpected things can happen along the way. So
precisely, like that's exactly what I think of is those kind of scenarios in a way in which they can play out a little bit more asynchronously. Like everyone has to be participating and doing specific actions to help kind of keep things moving along, but at the same time, like there's a time pressure that is associated with it, so that everyone still has to be working against the clock to achieve their goals, and then they're able to share the rewards for it.
Oh, absolutely. Maybe you forgot to bring an artisan life science along with you, and that might be detrimental.
Yeah,
got to cover all your bases.
Someone makes the choice to pick the plant on the moon, and it ends up like poisoning the whole crew, and everyone just gets sick and gets nothing when they return.
Oh, that gives me a great idea of making the choices separate for each player. Somebody screwed up and you don't know who it was. Oh, that could be a little dramatic. I could see that, definitely. Any plans to expand the in-game marketplace? Favorites list, maybe some graphs. Do we have long-term plans on that? Or we definitely added plenty of features.
Graphs to the top
I
of
think
my
they're
list.
coming.
Graphs are the top of my list. I want people to be able to see like a very clear sense of where where the price trends have been going for the last 30 days. Unless you like breathe and live the game and really like know where things ebb and flow, you may not recognize or realize that virtually every item in the game is its own like token that has a trading value that is different and cyclical in nature. And if you see the graphs in which those prices are moving up and down over time, you can better understand like when to time your buying and selling efforts, and to better strategize the best way in which you should be buying the things you need and selling the things you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Shmoo in the chat there asks for any plans for player cooperation outside settlements. I think we touched about a lot of that, group missions and things. I think maybe communication in game, is there a way for players to talk to each other that adds a whole level of moderation capabilities that we need to look at, I think, first. But what do you think, Mitch, in terms of player cooperation, maybe joining settlements together, big old co-ops?
I think multiple areas in which we can do. I think the near-term things you should expect will certainly drive from. I think the easiest low-hanging fruit that I can imagine will be imagine a leaderboard competition that scores a settlement, and everyone is competing at the settlement level. So it's the collective efforts of, the members of your settlement versus the collective efforts of members of other settlements.
Mm-hmm.
Those can be, if you're part of a very large group or a very large settlement, those things become very compelling and interesting when you're working together with a large group or community and trying to put a huge score up on the board. More longer term or more on the horizon, I think the intent behind the stuff I was talking about, away missions and stuff like that, is meant to be a little bit more open-ended and not specifically tied to settlements. I think it's more about just either starting a crew or joining a crew or something to that effect in a way that you can do things with a group of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's plenty of opportunity for, free agents out there, especially when things get going, to either settle down in a settlement or be, the best of you approached by one.
Yeah.
Has a little bit of come here, join us. That would be welcome for some, I'm sure. Let's see here. A lot of these questions have been answered or kind of duplicate up on each other. I think we're coming up to the end of an hour here, so I think we might just take a break with the questions. Do we have any burning ones in chat? Anybody got one that they need to get off their chest right now that wasn't answered? We'll give you a little bit of an opportunity to do that now before we get into the final celebrity drawing.
Settlement versus settlement leaderboards at some point. Don't know specifically. Can't really say that.
Seed selling. That was one you've promised a few times, Mitch. I guess they're just wondering where it's at. We know how to do it, but
so the plan for seed sowing is to basically allow players to effectively stake quantities of seeds in order to gain a return on that number. So the intent will be that you have to basically it takes a lot more time and a lot more resources, but it's intended to help you earn a range or a percentage of seeds that you're sort of trying to sow and get a higher yield from. So that's sort of the basic idea behind it. And then I want to augment that and take it further with once we put in composting, things like that, so you can do more fertilizing, you can do more sort of high yield type things. I've got a few different ideas that I want to put in that allow life scientists to really be able to take control and have a stronger impact on the seed market, because I think that that's an obvious thing that they should be more in charge of and be the force behind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think players are just excited and ready to get some of those swap over kits going so they can get their seeds going, or seed sowing, I should say.
Rover Works creation soon. It's coming. All the Gen 3 craftable buildings are coming. I've almost got them all finished. They're I had to kind of restructure and rearrange some of the groupings of things for fabrication and machining, but it's almost there. Player guide is a constant, ongoing work in progress. We certainly have a lot of updates to push out there. One of the things that we're working towards is just making sure there's a lot more information inside of the game, so that players are less reliant on needing the player's guide, so that they can get all the information directly inside of the game, and that the player's guide can serve more as a higher level explainer on how the overall game works and how all the different sort of systems and features are designed, but not as much on the nitty-gritty minutia of every single building or item.
Yeah, sure. The detailed data can stay in the game, while the high level stuff can be in the document. That changes a little bit less. More high level stuff. I agree. That's definitely one way we're looking at it. So let's see here. Any further questions? When's the new sale for Martizens? Well, we just sold some last ones. We don't have any news yet on that front. Any revision on the mining rig tasks consumes hefty stamina and power. Well, I think that's kind of the point of the mining rig. That's what it does. It's got a lot of power to run, and you're getting those resources right out of the ground for the work you put in.
Yeah, I would say there might be adjustments somewhat once we're doing the full overhaul on mining. We want it to have, mining as a profession has a lot of aspects to it that are currently being done by other professions. So like all the refinement of ores and minerals, like through smelting, really should be done as a mining profession. So those are things that we're moving over. But the sort of core philosophy behind like the mining profession is that it uses a lot of power. Like that is just one mainstay of that profession, is that it uses a ton of power. However, solar power is not the only power option that will be required or will be available in the near future. Like it's been already sort of teased, like there will be more adjustments, or not more adjustments, but there will be new supply chains and means of power that can be constructed. And you would likely need to figure out a way to put that power into your building. You might need an adapter, you might need a modification for a building, who knows. I don't want to spoil everything, but yeah, we want to have other means of power sources that can be built and done over time. We're just they're coming slowly.
These nuclear power plant options in power lines. Oh no!
Oh, someone's playing too much. Was it Factorio? Is that the one that has you have to set up all the power lines? I was just watching someone play that the other night on Twitch.
Better City Skylines without mods, but
yeah, exactly. Revision on withdraw text. So the withdraw text, we just put it in. We're gonna let it sit for a few days. We're gonna watch and see what happens. We don't have the intent of this being the permanent values. We are, especially if things go back to a more sane trajectory on the flow of Dusk, and we will continue to update and give feedback to players on it. Satisfactory. That's what I meant. Thank you. And the other consideration is to understand that it's a progressive tax. It's not a flat tax, meaning that like if you are not withdrawing over 25,000 Dusk in a single transaction, you probably are worrying more about this than you realize. And like, it's not a cumulative thing either, meaning that like in 2 weeks after your withdrawal, it's just based on the value of your transaction. There is not like, you're not going to just reach a 50% tax on all your withdrawals at some point. Like that's not how it's designed. And I think there's certainly a good amount of misunderstanding or even some confusion about how that is built. But I would say the only other thing to really call out is that it will be something that we continue to adjust over time based on Dusk inflation. Once we get the treasury pools put in place where Dusk is coming more circularly out of the treasury and not just being constantly minted into supply, things should stabilize a lot better as well. And we can again continue to adjust the rates accordingly.
Yeah. I see questions about martisan breeding in the chat. I just want to say, guys, let us get through the first 10,000 and then maybe we can discuss it. But realistically, I'm
First
not
of
so
all,
certain there.
It's not called breeding. We're not ever going to call it breeding. Let's just get that out of the way. Because that's a little weird. That's just a little exactly mating. We're calling it mating. But that said, and that's internal joke. It's not a confirmation or leak of anything. We want to get through the first 10,000 martisans. We want to continue to see the game grow. We want to see where the demand lies beyond that before we make any other choices. But if we were to go beyond that, it's unlikely they're not going to be this exact same. There will be they will be different in very distinct ways. They'll likely have a separate sub collection, or they'll be called like a series 2. They probably would not have any type of bankroll, like, you know, they'd be usable for sort of
Child labor,
for labor and utility purposes, correct. But it's we don't want to we don't want to we don't want to overpromise on that. We don't want to oversupply, and we want to ensure the existing martizens are being utilized already. So like if the utilization rate is not high enough, there's no compelling reason to want to sell and release more.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Maybe they only consume water and create waste for 5 years before they become usable.
Yeah.
A little bit of a maturation period might happen a little faster on Mars. But yes. All right. I think we've answered a lot of questions. We've been on air in just a little bit over an hour now. So I'm going to go ahead and start this celebrity drawing. So I'll go ahead and preface this saying that those of you who are here waiting for the celebrity drawing probably know that you each get a raffle ticket for each entry. So some of these entries on the larger side are going to have pretty big sizing on this this raffle pool, but don't worry. You know, these players can only win once, and good luck to the rest of you. So
yes,
we have Victor and Jesse up for grabs. Victor is the artisan and cooking profession, and the celebrity in that area, and Jesse's got that mining profession. So we're going to go ahead and do Victor first, and then we're going to do Jesse. So if you win Victor and you wanted Jesse first, maybe trade amongst yourselves. I'm not going to take responsibility for that. So we've got the wheel up. Victor first.
So yes, it's weighted. These are weighted drawings. So, whoa,
Musashi. Congratulations. You beat the odds.
That's impressive. All right, you want to make sure to take them out?
Yep.
Congrats. Holy cow.
All right. Good luck to this next winner for Jesse. Ben, congratulations, bud.
Congrats.
Let that start for a second. Pop that back off.
Oh, you're muted, Kyle.
Thank you. Expect if you get a celebrity martisans, expect less than like 24 hours. I got to go find you. I got to go send it to you. All that kind of blah, blah, blah stuff. Just so you guys know.
Have some patience.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. And we hope to see you and chat with you soon. If anyone has any further questions for us, feel free to find us in Discord, and hopefully we can help you. Bye, everybody.
Ciao.
Everybody.